you've got a bunch of really, really good programs on your YouTube channel. I thank whatever power it is that keeps you online, because some of this stuff is quite stunning. The war on children, while parents look the other way, the attack on the alternative media, anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, George Soros, the migrant crisis, Silicon Valley, and the AI agenda, and how high does the campaign against Corbyn go? Are you talking about Jeremy Corbyn, the notorious socialist?
Yeah. Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn's been a big disappointment in the sense that he's not been radical enough. And he's certainly not been upfront enough. What's been happening for people outside of Britain who don't follow this situation, but he's been targeted by the Zionist lobby, i.e. Israel, i.e. the Rothschilds, keep going deeper and deeper in the web, as an anti-Semite. It's been done systematically because what you have in this country now is a conservative party currently in government that will never criticize Israel. You have what's left of the so-called center party, the Liberal Democrats, will never criticize Israel. You've got the great chunk of the main opposition Labour Party of MPs who will never criticize Israel. They're the ones that still have a spiritual, their spiritual leader is Tony Blair. And what that did was left Corbyn, the official leader, and the group around him as the only people politically in this country, in any of the major parties, who would criticize Israel. Not criticize Jewish people, criticize the government of Israel. And so this targeting of him on anti-Semitism has been to silence the last voice in a major political party of criticism of Israel. And what's happened, you see, what Jeremy Corbyn should have done is basically say what I've just said. These months of abuse of me being an anti-Semite and Labour being an anti-Semitic party, and of course anti-Semitism is a complete misnomer. It really means anti-Arab, because the word Semitic comes from a language group in the Middle East, North Africa, which the vast overwhelming majority are Arabs. So even anti-Semitic's a misnomer. But anyway, take it for what they say it means. And he should have come out and said, look, this is just a silence criticism of Israel. And no, we're not going to bow to it. But he made the mistake of appeasing bit by bit by bit. And every time he appeased them, they demanded more. I mean, hello, Jeremy. I mean, can you not see the pattern? So what they've just done is accept as Labour Party policy in terms of what members can and cannot say, a version of anti-Semitism which was brought in by the Zionist lobby in the last few years, that is so insanely broad that almost any criticism of Israel could be claimed to be anti-Semitic. And we have the laughable, not in a funny sense, situation where the Labour Party now has accepted as anti-Semitic, claiming that Israel is a racist endeavor. That's part of this ludicrously broad definition now. So it's anti-Semitic, according to that definition, to say that Israel is a racist endeavor when it has just passed something called the nation-state law that basically enshrines apartheid into the law of Israel and says that only Jewish people in Israel have the right to self-determination. And, you know, going back to what I said earlier about people having the backbone to stand up for what is right, things as ludicrous and blatant as that, if you're going to bow to them, as Jeremy Corbyn has found, all they'll do is demand some more. Well, you're not quite on your knees yet. We've got some way to go. And as I said in a video cast, I do a video cast every week, one for subscribers and one public one. what we're seeing now with this, if you say Tel Aviv in the wrong tone of voice, it's anti-Semitic. Is Israel, that which controls Israel, getting its censorship in early? Because this whole anti-Semitic hysteria is not only about what is happening, silencing criticism of that and what has happened. It's about silencing criticism of what is planned to happen. And unfortunately, Donald Trump is basically owned by Israel. He's got Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, his senior advisor, and people like Jason Greenblatt, his international negotiator, including on the Palestinian situation. He's got Friedman as his ambassador to Israel, and these are ultra Zionists, extremists. I mean, Jared Kushner is a lifelong friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, because his father was Netanyahu's best mate, and Netanyahu used to come and stay at their house. And so if you look at it, the moment Trump was elected, Israel started building more and more Jewish-only settlements in Palestinian-occupied land that they never would have done before, because they knew they were going to get no kickback now. There's going to be no resistance. Then the embassy was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now they are putting more and more settlements into East Jerusalem, Jewish-only settlements, and forcing Palestinians out. And I know where this is going. I've been predicting it for years and years and years, and then some. They want to replace the mosque on what they call Temple Mount with a rebuilt Solomon's Temple, which, as I mentioned earlier, was a goal, has been a goal, because they still exist big time, of the Knights Templar established in the 12th century. It's been the goal of them all along. And so you can see where it's going. And, I feel sorry for Jewish people, most Jewish people anyway, because they've been given a totally misleading version of everything. And because they're being played like a stringed instrument as much as anybody else. This inner hierarchy of ultra-Zionist secret society people, they have as much contempt for the Jewish population as they have for everyone else. They put this face that what they say is speaking for every Jewish person in Israel and anywhere else. It's not. There are large numbers of Jewish people who oppose what they're doing. Even more, the vast majority, you don't know what they're doing and why. You've got fantastic young Jewish people in Israel. One who was on my website this week, who is in jail currently for refusing to accept the draft into the Israeli Defense Forces because he doesn't want to be part of the oppression of Palestinians. These are Jewish people that never have their voice heard. Jewish people that challenge the extremes of Zionism, they actually get more abuse from the ultra-Zionists than the rest of the population does, because they're even more dangerous, because you can't really get away credibly, though they try, with calling them anti-Semitic against their own race, their own people. Again, we come back to the same thing. These things need to be said because they can be factually supported quite demonstrably. And once we allow ourselves to move, as we are, into a post-fact society where facts are no defense against censorship, then we're entering a very dangerous world, and we must not submit to that. I'm not going to not say that the Israeli government is involved in racism when it's just written racism into the law of the land. Are you kidding? But of course, if you if you fear the consequences of going against the authority of the time, then you won't say that. And what is this? What is this doing? It's getting people to say, to quote 1984, that 2 and 2 equals 5. And once you enter a post-fact world where you accept, even through silence, that 2 and 2 equals 5, then what's the next thing? That, war is peace, slavery is freedom, and all the rest of it? That's what happens. Once you go into a post-fact society, no facts matter anymore, so you can say what you like. And absolutely ludicrous things become, oh, yeah, I agree with that. That's very sensible. So we must not allow ourselves to enter that post-fact society by being silenced in not speaking things that are demonstrably, supportably true, just because we fear what will be said and done if we do so. To my last breath in this reality, I'll be doing. Won't be doing that because it's finished. It's all over when we do, and more and more people are doing it, and it needs to stop because it's that road or that street, that alleyway ends only one place with your back against the wall and nowhere else to retreat. It's over, gone. I'm not having it.
You know, a minute ago, actually a couple of minutes ago, you were telling us who Jared Kushner really is, and your audio broke up all over the place. So I'd like for you to just tell us again, if you will, who is Jared Kushner?
Well, Jared Kushner is the father-in-law of Donald Trump. He's
right.
married to Trump's daughter,
right.
Who converted to Judaism as a result of marrying him. And he is an ultra-Zionist and who has invested and given money to develop legal settlements in occupied Palestinian land. And, of course, connects into Friedman, connects into Greenblatt. When Trump came in, he handed the treasury to Goldman Sachs, which also connects into the same people. Who was Trump's biggest donor? It was Sheldon Adelson, the American-Israeli casino magnate and media owner who owns media in Israel. So this Israel ultra-Zionist group is all around him. And this is very significant in terms of Middle East policy because Israel has a long-term plan of what they want to happen in the Middle East. And one part of it is to break up countries like Syria into basically balkanize them, break them up into smaller areas, and remove those people that do not want to do the bidding of Israel. This is why Assad is such a target. This is why America, with Israel in the background, won't let Syria just go back to a peaceful society. That's why what's happening now in Idlib and what have you is designed to keep pouring petrol on the fire because they don't want Assad to survive. That was not the idea. And without Russia coming in, of course, he'd have been long gone. It's the same with Gaddafi. These things are not happening by chance. They're happening according to a very not in this case, not just very clear agenda, but an agenda that was written down and documented and published in the September 2000. This list of countries they wanted to regime change through an organization called the Project for the New American Century, which published a list of countries they wanted the incoming Bush administration to regime change, and they were Iraq, Syria, Libya, Lebanon, Iran, North Korea, China. And the people that created the Project the New American Century, that published this document, calling for America to fight multiple theater wars in the Middle East and elsewhere to regime change, were two ultra-Zionists called Robert Kagan and William Crystal. And in the Project the New American Century, producing this document in September 2000, was Dick Cheney, who would soon be vice president, president in truth, Donald Rumsfeld, who would be defense secretary at the time of 9/11 and the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, Paul Wolfowitz, who was his deputy at the Pentagon, Doug Zackheim, who controlled the whole Pentagon budget as comptroller at the same time, and a man you may have heard of called John Bolton, who is now Donald Trump's national security advisor. He's never seen a country he didn't want to bomb. They've been picking off these countries ever since. And they said in that document in September 2000 that this process of transformation, i.e. this series of regime changes, would be necessarily slow, quote, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. 1 year to the month after that document was published, 9 months after the people that wrote it came to power with Bush, America had what Bush called at the time the Pearl Harbor of the 21st century, 9/11, which started the sequence that is still going on of ticking off this list of regime changes. So, I mean, you know, when you connect the dots in all these areas, it's so blatantly obvious what's happening. And this whole thing, you cannot say this, you cannot say that about Israel because otherwise you're a racist. That's to silence the exposure of the sort of things I'm talking about here. You'll notice I'm refusing to be silent about it because, you know, we're not going to change anything by being intimidated into silence, especially by these psychopaths.
I have to ask, this is my next to the last question, David.
Okay.
What do you see? What do you predict as the most likely next big event? Much like the 9/11 thing, which is, it really did. It's a cliche now to say that it changed everything. It did change everything. We're under total surveillance now. We're under a techno totalitarianism right now. We have no privacy whatsoever. Things being written into law like the NDAA that has nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. It was designed to protect us. So seems like it's just game on, do what you want, real laissez-faire there among the military intelligence industrial complex. So what's the brightest blip on your scope that's headed our way?
Well, you know, all these come with riders of, you know, if we go on as we are. But I've been saying since way back in the 1990s that the plan is for a third world war, pitching the West against Russia and China. And what is happening now would indicate that that is the plan. I've got a story on my website tonight about a meeting between Putin and the leader of China, saying that in the current uncertain political landscape, then Russia and China must come together and get closer. And you've got this, for any other reason, bizarre, massive build-up by NATO on the borders of Russia, down the NATO borders with Russia, which makes no sense. You've got this demonization of Russia. Now, I'm not an apologist for Putin. You know, if you are leading a country as big as Russia and you've been that leader for so long, then you know you don't take orders for Sunday school parties. But of course, all these leaders are ruthless, and those around them are ruthless. But, you know, we've also got to look at things like evidence, because if we don't, then we're in a post-fact society. And so you have a situation where Russia is accused of something, and they produced no substantial evidence to support it whatsoever. And then justify major changes and major actions based on the claim, but no evidence. I mean, we're back to the Nazis. The more you repeat the lie, the more people will believe it. You don't need evidence; just keep repeating the lie, and then it becomes, that's how things are, purely through repetition. Great form of mind control, repetition. And so we're seeing this demonization, and the situation in the Middle East at the moment, as we speak, with a build-up of American warships off the coast of Syria, or not far away, while the Russians and the Syrian army is trying to remove the terrorists from this last enclave, that they're looking for a fight. They'd love a fight because they want this to kick off. And I think Putin, for all his faults, has played this very well so far. He's not given them a reason for this to kick off, but at any time it could. I say they want it to. And, you know, another interesting little connection before we finish, another front in the demonization of Russia is Ukraine. They're saying, Russia wants to move in against Ukraine. There's no evidence for that at all. But there was a coup in Ukraine. They called it a revolution. It wasn't. It was a coup. The George Soros networks were very much involved. When a guy called Yanukovych, the president, was removed, and it was a coup instigated by the State Department in America. And he wanted to get closer to Russia and not the European Union, and he had to go. So he escaped to, I guess that is the word, escaped to Russia. And someone else came in, this Poroshenko, this chocolate factory man, who's a total puppet of the United States and this cabal. And who oversaw that coup in Ukraine on behalf of the State Department? A lady called Victoria Nuland, who was the Undersecretary of State for Eurasian Affairs at the time of the coup and oversaw the whole thing. Victoria Nuland is the wife of Robert Kagan, co-founder of the Project for the New American Century, who published that document in September 2000, listing the countries of regime change. When you delve, the more deeper you go into the rabbit hole, it's a very rarefied world where you keep meeting the same people over and over and over again, and that is where it's all coming from.
Wow, this is really something. It really is. Really. Well, you must tell us about Renegade. Going to come out in spring of next year, yeah?
Yeah, it was very interesting. I got this offer out of nowhere from a film production company in the United States to make this film Renegade about my life and work. And they were lovely people, and I think it's going to be a great movie. We filmed here where I live. We filmed on a speaking tour that I did. We filmed in Ireland about 2 weeks ago, also in London, and this one more day where we're going to film in Rome, really important point in this story. Filmed in Washington, D.C., filmed in Silicon Valley. Of course we would. And also had a wonderful day at the home of a lady called Alice Walker, the author of The Color Purple. who I didn't know, has been interested in my work for a long, long time. And I just had the most amazing day because she's just an incredible lady. Of course, was there in the 60s and was in the crowd at the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King. And it was absolutely fascinating to spend time with her. So it's been great. And like I say, it's being edited now. There's only 1 day's filming. And what I'm hoping is that it will put this information in front of a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise see it. And that's really the point of doing it.
Well, congratulations on that. And I look forward to seeing it.
What I'm also doing on this day of all days, we should mention this, is I'm putting together another book on 9/11 with all the information that I got together for the first one, which came out in a year to the month after 9/11, September 2002, with all the stuff that's been accumulated since and connecting all the dots together. And I'm in the process of doing that now, day after day, whenever I. But to see and put together and weave together the information that's been accumulated since through pilots for 9/11 and architects and engineers for 9/11, looking at the buildings and looking at the pilots and the planes, it is stunning at the fine, fine, fine detail there is now to show what a complete hoax 9/11 was in terms of the official story. And there are people still alive today who should be in jail, and the key throne that will be out in a few months' time. How many people know that the black boxes found, of course many weren't, so they said, and the very few, ludicrously few aircraft parts that were found have still, 17 years later, not been matched with the planes to show that they came from those planes.
Right.
Every black box, every part of an aircraft has a serial number. And that serial number can be shown to connect with the aircraft because there are logs to show what parts and what serial numbers were in what plane. So just putting the serial numbers with the plane and the log of the plane that's kept on the planes or for the planes by the airlines would prove that the planes that left those airports that day were the ones that crashed at the other end in what we call 9/11. None of those parts or black boxes have had their serial numbers checked and shown to be from the planes they were claimed to be. It's even down to detail like that. It's absolutely extraordinary, the scale of deceit. Why hasn't that been done? So they can show, see, look, these parts that were found at the Pentagon, these parts found here, they were from the planes we said they were. Why has that never been done? Because it's my view that the planes that left the airports were not the ones that struck the buildings. And that story, when it has all the meat put on it, explains what happened on 9/11 far more credibly, not that it could fail to, than what the official story has claimed, which is impossible. Impossible. Not just impossible here and impossible there and impossible there, virtually impossible everywhere you look. And the only reason that this has not come out before is the mainstream media just took the official version of everything, repeated it, perception programming, and has never questioned it. It's extraordinary when you see the scale of that event and what it has led to happening, without which would not have happened. And there has not been, to my knowledge anyway, a single mainstream independent investigation questioning the official story of 9/11.
There hasn't been.
Now, that fact alone screams cover up, because any journalist worth their name, and most of them are not, would have been on the case and say, that's a journalist's job, to say, okay, the government says this happened, let's see if it's true. Not repeat the official version verbatim, and abuse anyone who doesn't want to do that and wants to check things out. And if the media had have done that, then there have been a lot of people in jail now who are still in positions of power. But there's still time, John. There's still time.
Yes, there is. One of them in particular is in his 90s.
Yes, a lot of them are. Why do they live so long compared with the population? Why does the royal family of Britain live into their 90s? The Queen Mother of the present Queen, nearly 102, because they don't get the same treatment we get. Plus a lot of other things that I talk about in the books, why they tend to live for so long. We finish as we started. There's two worlds. There's the one we live in, and there's the one that we live in is manipulated from.